Welcome to Fire Your Doctor. Is this episode 12?
Episode 12.
Oh, well, that's fun. What are we talking about today?
Well, let's see. Forks, feelings, and flare-ups. A triple F. We're not designed for this. We're going to talk about gout. We're going to talk about emotional eating and the pain of disconnection. There's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. Actually, this is a great episode.
Cool. All right, let's get into it.
Well, I think first we have to introduce the Western diet. In the book, if you're reading the paperback, we are in, let's see, we're in microbiome actually still.
Yeah.
And so we're in the second part of Microbiome 201, which is in the section Gut Health and the Western Diet. Richard Lockwood, can you tell me Western diet, just what is the Western diet? What's the...
Anything you can order at McDonald's is the Western diet. But beyond that, I would say sometimes it's called the standard American diet. Generally, it's going to be high in processed foods, high in fat, a lot of sodium, refined carbohydrates.
Made for taste, not nutrition.
Yeah, and then also made for affordability and shelf stability. Mm-hmm. So we would have preserved snacks and sweet treats, kind of salty chips that are fried and all that stuff, mm-hmm. French fries, cheeseburgers, all that kind of stuff. But more than that, just mainly like processed foods. Yeah,
a lower quality usually. Shelf stability, I like that. It's trying to, like a...
Yeah, mass-produced.
Mass-produced, sitting on a shelf, can sit on there for years without going bad.
And then also fortified. So to make up for the fact that it's so shelf-stable and preserved, they'll add vitamins and things like that. So even you're just kind of, well, what's wrong with flour? People have been eating bread since the time of the Bible. Like, what's wrong with bread? Mm-hmm. And so I guess their bread wasn't wrapped in cellophane, shipped across the country.
With a bunch of fake vitamins in it.
Low-quality vitamins in it.
Yeah. So the quote is, macaroni and cheese, crackers and chips, pasta, most commercial breads and pastries, breakfast cereals, soda pop, juice boxes, even the supposedly healthy ones are all processed food. What's always surprised me is just how accepted and habitual these junk foods have become in our society. When we eat, we're not just feeding foods that have become... I lost my place. When we eat food, we're not just feeding ourselves, we're also feeding the trillions of gut microbes living inside of us. Bad food means the bad germs inside of us get stronger. What do you think about that? So it's not just these Western foods, but it's also, as we've started this discussion through the microbiome, it's the fuel that you're giving to these germs that may not be very low in inflammation.
Right. So this is a question that you might get sometimes where somebody's like, okay, hey, great. I know my calorie needs and I am meeting those calorie needs with cheeseburgers. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what's the problem with that? Or I'm just, I know my calorie needs. I'm going to just eat ice cream. And there you go. I hit my number. That's my calories. I'm great. And the problem with that is that it's not just about calories in and calories out. That might be enough to keep you skinny, but it's not going to keep you healthy. And number one, a lot of those foods are very devoid of nutrients. Number two, even if they are fortified with nutrients, they're low quality. Number three is eating ice cream. And even if it's just kind of received a special dispensation that makes it non-GMO, all-natural agave nectar, that kind of a calorie profile where it's very high in sugar, you've got those fats in there as well, is going to feed gut microbes that over time are going to lead to negative health outcomes.
Absolutely. So it's great that you mentioned agave nectar. Agave nectar is made from the agave plant, which is basically the same plant that makes our friend tequila.
Yeah. It's a sugar.
It's a sugar.
But they make it sound good.
Yes. Well, what agave nectar is essentially is a fancy word for something called high fructose corn syrup. which,
well, wait a minute.
yes.
Wouldn't it be agave syrup?
Yes, but the breakdown of it, the molecular compound of agave syrup is the same as the one that they will extract from corn to make high fructose corn syrup.
Okay.
So it acts the same way in the body as high fructose corn syrup. Now, let's just break this down for a second and then
no, but
ask
it's non-GMO though.
I know, right? Let's break this down because this was a huge aha moment to me when I was in medical school. When this was explained to me, a doc came in who his specialty was diabetes and metabolic disorders, and he did a lecture on high fructose corn syrup, which would include some of these other extracted syrups that are, such as agave nectar.
For I don't actually have autism, but just my particularity is bothering me to call it corn syrup. Can we just call them all high fructose syrups? Can we do that?
Yes, but we need to. Yes, and they all they are allowed to be called vegetable sugars now, according to labeling. So you can call high fructose syrups or high fructose corn syrup or those types of things.
Okay.
You can call them vegetable sugars now. So it's made from vegetables. It's got to be good, right?
Okay, gotcha.
And non-GMO. No.
Yeah, I guess a beet.
Yeah.
A beet would be.
Exactly. So the way that sugar is normally processed in the body, we talked about in one of the earlier episodes, but just to remind you, when sugar or something sweet comes into the system, you're automatically going to get a response as if you're dealing with sugar, regardless if it's actual white table sugar or if it's a high fructose syrup. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind. So just the taste of sweetness coming in the body already gets the body ramped up to deal with the sugar.
Well, wait a minute. I think when we were talking about that, there is another key point in there. And that other key point would be that we're also talking about 0-calorie sugar substitutes. Yeah. So your sugar sweet. Alcohols. And
totally.
So even if I'm eating a 0-calorie thing sweetened with sorbitol or whatever, no calories, my body is what you're saying is my body is still going to have an insulin response to that. And that over time, that could kind of pave the way for diabetes, even if I'm not consuming calories.
Absolutely. So just the sweetness, just the taste of sweet itself, regardless if it's erythritol or xylitol or stevia, anything, it's going to elicit a response in the body. So you can't get around that. It's just going to do it. The body thinks it's going to have something sweet. It starts mounting all of the chemical hormones in the body to make it digest. Sure. However, in the cases of sugars that are not sugars, and in this case, we're talking about high fructose sugars, such as high fructose corn syrup, agave nectar being another one, all the insulin starts to be purged out. But the insulin isn't what deals with it to process it. It's actually required to be processed by the liver. And the liver has to take it in because they're like, well, wait a second. The lock and the key don't fit. Like the insulin, this isn't real sugar, so it doesn't fit. Send it to the liver. And when it sends it to the liver, it has two choices. One, make it fat, make some fat. Or two, make uric acid. Okay, so does that make sense? And repeat that.
I think we got a couple points that we need to clarify. Number one, I don't think we really briefed people clearly on your kind of lock and key analogy for insulin and insulin response.
Okay.
And then you were talking about there was one thing that could be misconstrued to think that you were talking about where you're talking about insulin being purged out. Mm-hmm. It's no, insulin's rising and then insulin falls as your body processes that. I think what you're saying with the whole kind of lock and key is, okay, so if we're talking about diabetes and kind of blood sugar, insulin is what is going to take these sugars that have hit your bloodstream and take them out of your bloodstream by moving them into cells where they could be processed.
Yes.
What you sounds like you're saying is that even though insulin is going up from, say, high fructose corn syrup or high fructose superorganic whatever agave syrup that functionally could be just the same as corn syrup, the body cannot take those directly into, say, a muscle cell to break down as energy. It actually has to, even though you're getting an insulin response, those high fructose syrups have to be brought through the liver before they can actually be processed in the body, at which point you have two paths: break it down into sugar or break it down into uric acid as a byproduct.
Really good summary.
Okay, I hope I got
One clarification I want to make, if I haven't talked about the lock and key,
Yes.
the hormone insulin, which is made by the beta cells inside your pancreas, just in case
I'm
you
an
need,
alpha cell.
it's
all the
a
way.
beta cell. In the islets of Langerhans, if you want to really get nerdy there. However, these beta cells will produce this hormone called insulin. And I'd always describe insulin is the key that unlocks the cell membrane to bring in sugar. And people will say, oh, okay, great. That just table sugar? No. Everything is broken down to sugar. That is the fuel. Your body only has two types of sugar it uses: glucose and ketones. Ketones are typically used by the brain and the nervous system, and glucose is used by the cells. So the muscles, kind of nutrient transfer, all of that. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. But that key, again, that insulin key opens the lock to allow certain types of glucose into the cell, but not high fructose syrups. That is like, they try to do it. It tries to bring it in the cell, but the lock mechanism doesn't agree with it. And so it ends up having to be sorted out by the liver.
Okay.
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 And another clarification, that could be the breakdown of pastas or crackers or other carbohydrates such as that, as we talked about Western diet, right? So we think, well, I'm not eating anything sugary, but I am having chips and bread and pasta and these other white flours. Those are also very dense forms of glucose, basically.
Well, I mean, to be fair, eating bread, I wouldn't necessarily put that quite on the same level because it is going to take a little bit longer to break down.
Sure.
So it's not going to spike quite as high as like, I'm just going to eat spoonfuls of honey or table sugar, or I'm going to eat bread.
Correct.
So it hit your system slower, but you're still saying that it's going to be however many grams of carbohydrates.
Even fat can be broken down into sugar, and even protein can be broken down into sugar. It's just how much and how fast. And that's all there is to it. Like if we look at it on a cell level. So that being said, the liver has now received these high fructose syrups, such as agave or corn syrup. And it is now maple syrup is a sugar. It's actually a real sugar. So
and not honey. Corn syrup. We're talking about actual pure maple syrup. You paid more for it.
Yes, we call it tree blood in our family.
Okay.
Yes. So actual real tree blood is a glucose. It's a form of glucose. So it is not. It does not act the way the high fructose does. As honey is the same type of thing. It's a glucose. Okay, just to clarify that. That does not mean you can drink gallons of it, and that does not mean you can eat gallons of it. It's natural, right? But it does mean that at least your body has a appropriate response for it, and it doesn't have to compensate by having it detox through the liver, is what I'm getting at. Does that make sense?
Is there a differential, and this is a little bit off script, is there a differential with the extra time it takes to process these high fructose syrups through the liver and the insulin response? Because it's like your body would have to go and burn something else while it's waiting for the liver, even though it's having this insulin response. So you could actually have like kind of a high insulin response and then almost like a carb crash while you're waiting for the liver to catch up. And then afterwards, by the time the liver is done processing that glucose, there's kind of nowhere for it to go.
And you'll have a spike. Your blood sugar will remain high.
Like after the fact.
Yep.
Long after the fact. So it's like, I'm going to drink a sports drink. I happen to choose one that is sweetened with either agave nectar or high fructose corn syrup. Mm-hmm. Rock and roll. I go for a run. I get kind of a insulin spike. And then 3 hours later or 2 hours, I don't know how long the liver would take to process that, but presumably there would be a time delay afterwards. And now all of a sudden I actually get that sugar that I was supposed to have an hour ago or 2 hours ago.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
But the The liver takes it and it makes it into glycogen. That's the form that comes out of the liver. And
I was going to ask about glycogen, but we were already too complicated.
And then glycogen gets broken down into glucose. So everything always gets to that final product, which is the glucose eventually. Okay. Or if the liver is overwhelmed, which as we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about, most people who live in the US have very toxic bodies. They're exposed to a lot of chemicals, plastics, red food dyes, Western diet, pesticides, insecticides, all of those things have to be processed typically through the liver. So this liver's already sluggish, bogged down from this exposure that we're having. And now you're asking it to do all the sugar processing too. It's really not good. And so what we're seeing is a rise in something where if there's high uric acid, it's because the liver is bogged down and it doesn't know what to do with the rest of it. So it goes and stores it either in fat to use for later, or it makes uric acid, which will eventually lead to something called gout.
Let's actually talk. This is also something that we didn't really put in the notes. But so when we're talking about gout, traditionally, wasn't it like red meats and things like that? And you'd say like just in general, just really heavy foods were associated with gout. And it was kind of like the royal disease.
Yes.
What you're saying is that if I'm worried about gout, what I would need to be more concerned with would be my insulin response, and particularly these corn syrup, maybe the agave syrup and like stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say that. Let's read a couple things from the book here. Right. So I think you actually wrote this part. This is the disease of kings because only wealthy nobles could afford the opulence associated with heavy alcohol use and junk food. The problem is we're all kings and queens now. We have delivery on demand. We have food anytime we want it, 24 hours a day. We are living in absolute opulence. There's very few people. There's a comment one of my patients made. She grew up in India. She said, even your homeless people are fat here. And I was like, wow, you know what? You're right. A lot of them are overweight. Like, I didn't think about that.
God bless our homeless people.
God bless them.
I'm not throwing shade on them.
But it gets to this point of, in India, people will be starving on the streets. There's not the availability of this type of food to anybody, right?
Right. And when we look at kind of antiquity, okay, if you lived in England 300 years ago, it's like sugar, oranges, and fruit, or like anything kind of sweet like that. Maybe apples they could get locally. But most of the things that you would get sweet in, say, England and Northern Europe, those would have to come by ship and it would take months or a year. And so it was kind of like, I don't know if you remember the old like Charles Dickens kind of thing, like stories where it's like, it's Christmas time and you're getting an orange.
Yeah.
And that's like a traditional Christmas treat.
Yeah.
Because
God bless us, everyone.
This took a year to get here. Yes. How is it not already like rotten?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so what I'm getting at is that a lot of these kind of sweet treats were extremely rare.
Yes.
And just highly sought after. And it's like...
And then also who could afford it? Well, the nobility could afford it.
Or maybe you could afford one for a special occasion and kind of like, hey, you know what? It's Christmas time. We're going to...
have some chocolates and an orange.
We're going to have a chocolate and an orange. And then...
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now we can go down to the local grocery store and it's an entire aisle of chocolate.
Yeah. You can't pay for gas without walking by an aisle of chocolate.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And they don't sell oranges at the mini mart because nobody would buy them.
So in this analogy, this is another quote from the book. In this analogy, gout is an urgent warning that the hypothetical building, your body, will soon be engulfed in flames. Uric acid plays a role in mediating proper immune response. The presence of uric acid crystals in the body triggers an inflammatory immune response similar to when a bacteria invades a cell. Gout can contribute to inflammatory and autoimmune conditions, particularly ones affecting joints.
Yes.
So this is interesting because uric acid is on our standard panels. Even if a person is not complaining of joint pain, usually it's one of the first signs to me that their metabolic health is about to go off the rails. So if they start getting higher levels of uric acid, this is a early warning sign to me that there's a lot of inflammation in the body.
So what you are saying is that your enhanced lab panels that are going beyond what you'd normally get from your PCP are catching elevated uric acid before it's symptomatic.
Correct.
And that is a warning sign to you that things are coming and we need to make changes now so that all of a sudden you're not gout, diabetic, inflammation running away and all that.
Yeah. Typically on the panels, you'll see an elevation in uric acid and you'll start to see an elevation in insulin itself.
Okay.
And you will not see any changes to blood sugar.
So their insulin is still able to compensate for the blood sugar that they have, but we're starting to see these early warning signs in that insulin levels are up, and eventually the body is going to outstrip its capacity to make insulin, even if it's upregulated. And then eventually it's going to, hit like a threshold with the uric acid. It's going to be problematic.
Yes.
Okay.
So the question is, and I'll pose it to you, and then maybe we can just kind of dissect this a little bit. Why can't people just stop eating? Like, hey guys, you read 12 diet books and you know that most people know junk food is not good for them. But why can't people stop eating? Or why can't people avoid eating those things and go back to a more traditional way of eating? I would say, in patient populations where they're living closer to the poverty level and the income is lower, one of the complaints they have is that food is more expensive. Just meat and vegetables and all of that is more expensive, and it's cheaper to go out to eat.
That's not actually true.
Well, I guess it would depend if you have a kitchen or not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you don't have a kitchen, but I mean, I would say that number one, it's complicated, but really what it comes down to is that there's a fundamental void in the human condition that we're all trying to fill with something.
Mm-hmm. I would say that's absolutely true.
As far as, but your side question, you asked like 5 questions at once, but I remember 2 of them. One is was the one about kind of why we are not just all eating our vegetables and none of this is a problem. And then number 2 was related to money and kind of socioeconomics and diet. Number 1 is that going and literally buying chicken from the store, whatever, just buying a chicken and buying a potato and carrots and broccoli is cheaper, in fact, per serving than going out to fast food. And it is cheaper than fast food. It is not cheaper in terms of time. And so one of the factors is okay, you have a 2-income household and et cetera. Maybe they're working a physically demanding job. Their battle is more about just time and effort that it takes to prepare those meals. Can you do it? Yes, you can, but it's going to require a level of discipline. And then the other thing is if you're working a job you don't like and you're living in a neighborhood you don't like and everything, it can be even more tempting to kind of reach for something that's man, I hate my job. Everybody's yelling at me all day. It's loud, it's dirty, it's maybe it's unsafe. And it's really easy to reach for a 6-pack and a bottle of the cheapest wine you can find and, some sweet snacks that taste good and just kind of zone out watching Netflix because that's $10 a month. Mm-hmm. And so there's also this factor of kind of self-soothing and comforting involved.
Absolutely. I would agree on that. And I mean, in our patient population, we tend to see people who are, they're pretty educated. They've come in, they've listened to podcasts, they've read books. They're looking for this next level of optimal health, and they may have gone to quite a few doctors, and they may have a couple complicated chronic things going on at this point. And it's very easy to just assume people don't know. So I always start with, what do you know? And just ask them, well, what have you tried? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And you know what? Most of them have tried all the different things. They've tried the carnivore diet. They've tried the keto diet. They've tried paleo. They've tried these things. Maybe they stuck with them for a while and now they've slid back and they can't quite maintain that lifestyle or make that full switch over to making it part of an everyday process.
Okay, yeah. So let me see. What was the second part of the question?
So I think
I answered the first part as far as like money and food and things like that.
Yeah, I think time, that's a very big factor.
So time,
Yes.
single mom, like getting home from work and then you've got to like ramp up and like make a from scratch meal. That's going to be hard. And then there's also just like the culture, culture. If a lot of the kind of, hey, you know what? I always grew up, my mom just took us to McDonald's and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And so this is just what we do. It's Friday night, it's payday. We're supersize me.
Yeah.
And so there's also that kind of culture where in kind of like wealthier, more educated circles, it's like, it's almost cool to see how rare and weird you can get your food. Oh, yours is just organic. Mine's free range, fair trade. I don't know, just all the things.
Yeah.
So I would say there's also kind of a cultural shift almost to the other side to the point of being annoying in some high end circles.
That's it.
About how exclusive and weird you can get your food.
Well, we were talking about, we've talked about being Christian on this podcast many times before, and we started really thinking about this because Rich and I and one of our friends, May, run a ministry which volunteers time to go inform people about health and movement and exercise, and it's part of our sort of outreach within the church. Yeah. Just helping people to really understand this. But also a huge part of that ministry has been the spiritual and emotional perspective around food and stewardship of that food and disordered desire.
Yes. And actually what's kind of funny, if you find yourself as a non-Christian or something and you want to kind of feel like you won one against the Christians, in our practice, what we've found is that actually the Christian community by and large is behind on what I would call physical stewardship of their bodies. Yes. Compared to a lot of the kind of more urban, well-educated secular circles. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because the Bible actually does have a lot to say about food, but it's just something that the church just kind of sleeps on.
Yes. There's a quote that's in the book. It's really powerful. And apparently we're not allowed to say this P word on YouTube. But what is the quote, Rich? It is Richard's quote. So
yeah. The Western diet is the P word for your taste buds.
And the P word would be a description. How do we describe
adult content?
Adult content for your taste buds.
And that, for some people, that could be kind of a hot take, but I told that to a Christian audience and they would be very unhappy with somebody in their midst that was consuming that kind of adult content, but at the same time, food is one of these ones that just kind of gets a pass. So let's unpack this a little bit. So let's just call it adult content. That is going to be something that gives you all of the pleasure of human intimacy without any of the intimacy. Mm-hmm. There's no connection to somebody that you love. There's no covenant where it's like, you know what, I love you. I'm spending my life with you. We're going to experience this pleasure together. And, maybe someday we're going to bring new life into the world through that love. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be a sign, whatever. Everybody's heard the joke about makeup sex, but it's kind of real. There's a covenant there. And it's just like, all right, I can't stay mad at you. You know what I mean? And so when we take that pleasure outside of any real human connection and you're just kind of on your phone or your laptop alone in your apartment, you are deeply, number one, it's spiritually terrible for you. And then number two is you're also short-circuiting all of your kind of biological wiring and getting that pleasure and that kind of dopamine payoff without actually building any of the relationships that's going to give you that oxytocin that chemically is going to give you stability and purpose in your life.
How are we meant to eat? How are we meant to eat together?
Well, and then so when we look at food, it's like, everybody knows there's the, well, I don't want to mention brands, but there's specific brands that are like two dudes' names. And then there's these little like kind of semi-personal cups of ice cream, but it's pretty generous personal cup. And if you read the label, it's like 4 servings and it's called like the breakup cup, and it's like, I'm emotionally sad. I'm feeling lonely. Like my dog died, girl left me, or, my boyfriend something or whatever. And so you reach for the breakup cup. And so that would be like a prime example of that kind of P word for your taste buds that the Western diet is.
Yes.
In contrast, when we look at what food is supposed to be, food isn't supposed to just be this meaningless like flash in the pan that I use to just keep myself out of clinical depression. Like there's the dragon chasing me. Food is supposed to be, number one, something that nourishes us. So this is going to be long-term sustaining. It's going to be energy to go out and fight for something. Food is a purpose. Historically, food was a purpose. I'm going to grow these crops. I'm going to start this farm. I'm going to raise these animals. I'm going to milk these cows. And in return, I'm going to get food. Whereas now it's just kind of like I just swipe my card, or I didn't even have to swipe my card. I just click on the app and 10,000 calories are at my door in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we've really just divorced all of this, all of these kind of purpose and drive, survival, provision for family, and there was this way that provision of food would provide meaning for a family. Like, maybe you're cooking a meal, maybe you're going out to hunt, maybe you're farming and you're just like looking at my wife and children, like eating the food that I helped grow.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a lost connection. But then also like in the Bible, and in many other traditional cultures, food was always something. It's just like, if you share a meal together, it's a covenant.
Yeah.
It's like...
Well, it's how you welcome people into your home.
Yeah.
We love to feed people and have good conversation. It's one of our favorite things to do.
And even outside of the Christian community, if you pop over to the Muslim world for a second, if you eat a meal with someone, it's a pact. It's like a friendship, it's like you don't betray that, to eat a meal with somebody and then kind of like do them dirty is like a huge dishonor to yourself and your entire family.
Yeah. And
that's because this food and sharing food together is covenantal and it's relationship building. And that's why, any time that we have like, any of our holidays, there's always like, we're sharing a meal together. We might get some rare treats to share together and kind of just tell all of our stories that nobody cares about and they've heard before, but it's connection and it's love. Yeah. And so there's this way that it's like when I'm getting the kind of breakup cup or whatever, I'm trying to get that feeling of Thanksgiving with my grandma that loves me, that maybe she's passed away now, but I'm trying to get that by myself in my apartment when my entire life is devoid of human love.
Yeah. Deep stuff. And how do we steward that? And what is the body that we've been given? Our belief is that the body is the temple of God, of the living God, and that we are here with a purpose to love God and love others. And if we are putting junk food in our body that's making us tired and gain weight and slow and joint pain and all of these things, how effective are we going to be at our purpose of loving God and loving others?
I guess a good rule of thumb, if you are looking for the kind of like moral plumb line, like the line of morality through eating, would I feed this and would I encourage this for somebody that I love? Would I want, is this the life? Is this the physical health level? Is this the long-term outcome for somebody that I love? And so that's a tough one. I have young kids and they love their treats, and I love them enough to tell them no. I say yes too. I mean, we get some treats, but we're managing that. And I'm also looking at their physical health and the outcome that I want to have for them.
Yeah.
And so I would say, how much treats is too much. It's like, well, what's your outcome? And so I think that's also something that people can run into is like one sit up equals one cupcake. And it's like, it might take 1,000 sit-ups to make up for a cupcake.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's okay if like a cupcake's like a rare every couple months kind of thing, but we can get into this habitual lifestyle that we're never going to work out enough to make up for it.
One of the things we talk about in our ministry is the treat trap. We've talked about that. That everything is not a treat, and somehow we've made everything a treat. Oh, it's just a little treat. Yeah. Oh, here, have a treat. Oh, you deserve a treat. Oh, you should get a treat.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Okay, so I'll give you an example. You're at the office, you're in high pressure kind of like sales or brokerage or whatever, and it's like, we landed the big account. Let's go out and celebrate. How are we going to celebrate? Drinks. Mm-hmm. You know what? We lost this big account. This is terrible. Man, I really had a tough week. How do we console ourselves? Drinks. Like, man, it was a long work week. I put in a ton of hours and I've really been getting after it. And, this is a hard job. Drinks.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we can end up in this trap. Like, you can see it.
Everything's a treat. Nothing's a treat.
Yeah. Where it's like, you console yourself when you're sad with drinks. You congratulate yourself when you're happy with drinks. You give yourself variety when you're bored with drinks. And it's like, you can see it and it's like, oh, so you have a problem with alcohol. And it's like, well, if you reward yourself with treats, you console yourself with treats, you entertain yourself with treats, then you kind of, if you're happy, sad, or bored, then you're having treats. And that would kind of sum up about 90% of the human existence.
Yes.
I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm bored.
Let's be really clear on what is actually a treat. So I think we actually have a formula for this. I can't remember the exact, but it's something like
y equals ms plus b. That's slope-intercept.
That's the
geometry.
Pythagorean theorem? No.
Y equals mx plus b.
Okay, yeah, slope-intercept.
Yeah.
A squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's Pythagorean. Okay, just in case.
Give me a quadratic and no.
Plus or minus.
No. Okay.
B. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, the formula.
Treat trap.
Treat trap. What's the formula? Okay. You should not. It's not a treat if you're having it once a day. Like, that is not in the consideration. I would say sugar type snacks once a week. Pizza is one of the things we love. How often do we have pizza?
Every couple of months.
Every few months.
Yeah. And when she says a treat, you mean like a cookie?
A cookie.
And that would also this would probably be for maintenance.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, if you're having a cookie every week and you're somebody that struggles with this,
you might need to break the habit of having a cookie first.
Yeah, like maybe you can't get away with a cookie every week. There's people that, to go back to our other analogy, there's people that can't have alcohol every week. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They can't have it ever, or else they blow up their lives.
There has been periods of my life where I've had to take extended periods off of sugar. I just had to do it. It was like I had to cleanse it out of my system. I had to pray against it. I had to break habits around it and submit it, because I didn't have the self-control for it.
Yeah. So in the Christian world, we think of, it's just kind of like, especially for Protestants or even Catholics too, it's like, well, I have met the requirements of my denomination, whether it's Hail Marys or I go to church every Sunday and, I read my Bible and I don't smoke or I don't whatever, there's that, but there's also just kind of these secret covenants that we just kind of have. And people always think that, like, if you make a deal with the devil, it's just like that he just kind of poof just appears to you and it's this big contract kind of thing. But it's like, if we just unconsciously just kind of gravitate towards something, a substance or a feeling or just anything like that, if we just gravitate towards that whenever life gets hard or if that's just kind of the thing that we unconsciously reach for, then we can start to make these spiritual covenants with these substances.
That's why alcohol is called a spirit.
Yeah.
Yee.
Yeah. And so that can happen with food.
Yes.
And so it's, and there's a lot of Bible verses about gluttony, about, don't make your God your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And that I don't think anybody ever wakes up in the morning and is just time to make my God my stomach, time to worship my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just kind of habitually reaching for those kind of things, then you might be starting to blur that line a little bit.
Yeah, we need to submit it to something bigger than ourselves. There is freedom in that for sure. Why weren't we meant to consume food that hijacks our biology? This food, this junk food that we've been talking about, it's trash TV. It's consuming something.
It's the P word.
It's the P word.
We're taking something that's narrowly beneficial and isolating it from anything good. So in the natural world, and it also depends on what your lifestyle is. If you were living as a shepherd, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, you find honey, you better eat that honey. This is a rare treat. And we got to search after that. And you probably you're covering miles of rough terrain every day. Okay, hey, there's a lion trying to steal your sheep. Well, it's either the lion eats all the sheep and you don't have any food, or you figure it out. And so there's this way, though, that the modern world has made just sugar so easily available and so divorced from any human effort, mm-hmm. that we're in this artificial kind of place. Yeah.
And it really does hijack our senses. It makes us crave it more. It's designed that way. This junk food they actually have food scientists who sit in labs to make that food more addictive to you. They put MSG sprinkles on your Doritos. And
they call it recreational eating.
Yes.
Or a recreational beverage.
Yes.
Something that's just designed to just be as pleasurable as possible.
So I got a quote: our relationship with food may be the single most important thing we can do for our gut health.
Yes.
We must get right with food. For me, there's no getting right with food without getting right with God. While a number of my readers find Christian morality very uncomfortable, now it's time for all the Christians to get uncomfortable. Here's an analogy that may hurt, but go with me for a minute. If you let it become habitual, junk food can become the P word for your taste buds. This isn't just my idea. Medical research shows numerous patterns in the parts of our brains that desire food, sex, and emotional intimacy. And then there's a study that's linked to that.
So chemically, these sugary, fatty comfort foods will start to mimic and replace the hormones that you would get from love and passion and intimacy.
Yes. Yes, we must be very cautious about this.
The Western diet is the P word for your taste buds.
Yes. Okay, I got a quote from the Bible. This is 1 Corinthians 6:12. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. And that is Paul, actually. Yeah. St. Paul. Apostle Paul, talking about how God has blessed the food. You're blessed to eat it. We don't live under Levitical law anymore. We can eat things that we maybe couldn't eat past, in the past. And everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. And we need to get to a point where we're able to discern what that is.
Right.
That's what I got.
That's what I got.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day. If you're listening in your car, don't crash. Get home safely, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Bye.